Now, in this video, we're going to be looking at the internal structures of the heart. So I've removed this front piece here. This piece was here. I've taken that off. So now we can see a lot of those valves that are situated between the chambers. So you have to identify the chambers either from the outside or the inside. You can look for the superior and inferior vena cava and know you're looking at the right atrium here. And then down here, this chamber, this extra space here is the right ventricle. And if you're thinking like there's not a lot of space there, keep in mind, the way these models are cut, some of the ventricle is going to be contained like in here, like that's making up a portion of the chamber as well. So we have the right ventricle. The specific name for the valve on the right side between atrium and ventricle is called the tricuspid valve. It's one of those AV valves. And then here on the left side, over here, this is going to be that left atrium. There's those pulmonary veins. Underneath there, this is representing all of the left ventricle through here. The valve that's between left atrium and left ventricle, the special name is called the bicuspid or mitral valve. So both of these AV valves are going to have those strings attached. So we have the chordae tendineae. It's going to be all these strings through here. And these are going to be anchored to some muscles in the ventricles called the papillary muscles. So here's a papillary muscle. There's another one right there. If we look on this side, we can see a papillary muscle. Or here's half of one. There, it's kind of cut in half on this model. So we have the AV valves, tricuspid and bicuspid. And then here, this is showing us those semilunar valves. I thought these looked kind of like a crescent shaped. So these are named for the arteries that they're going into. So this is the pulmonary semilunar valve or SL valve. Aortic semilunar valve, you kind of have to tuck it up and look inward here. The very top of that left ventricle is the aortic semilunar valve or aortic SL valve. Okay, then if we were to look dividing the two ventricles, this is the interventricular septum or the IV septum. You can say IV in between interventricular. And another thing we can see on this model in particular, there's going to be this fibrous material found between the two arteries. This is referred to as the ligamentum arteriosum. So initially there's an opening there, but then it fills up with fibers kind of shortly before birth so that we don't have any mixture of the oxygen poor and oxygen-rich blood. You can keep in mind, the way these models are colored, blue is representing oxygen poor, red is representing oxygen rich. For the most part, you can expect arteries to be red, veins to be blue. The exception, though, is for the pulmonary vessels. Remember, pulmonary arteries have oxygen-poor blood. They're going to the lungs. Pulmonary veins have oxygen-rich blood. They're coming back from the lungs. Okay, so those are going to be some of the structures we can see. For now, let's look at the larger heart model. See some of the differences here. So, again, we got superior vena cava. So this is showing us there's the right atrium in there. We're going to have right ventricle continuing here. We have the left ventricle over here. Left atrium, when you look in the back, we can fold this down and you can see that chamber through here. And then if we look at the valves, so the special name for the valve on the right side is the tricuspid valve. On the left side, we're going to have the bicuspid valve. It's kind of neat from this perspective. We can see the two flaps that make up that valve. We got one flap here and another flap up here. That's why it's called bicuspid. There's two flaps. Tricuspid has three. Then again, our semilunar valves, we have the pulmonary semilunar valve meeting up with the right ventricle. Left ventricle is going to have the aortic semilunar valve. Those three cusps are making up those valves. The AV valves, atrioventricular, are going to have those unique structures. We have the chordae tendineae, all these strings through here, maybe up through there. So if I ask to identify the structure on the valve, that would be the chordae tendineae. These are going to be anchoring into these large muscle bundles here called papillary muscles. Kind of two main ones on the left side, then you're going to have three on the right side primarily. Some papillary muscles there. Some other muscles you have in the ventricles are called trabeculae carneae. So anywhere that's not a papillary muscle, there are these ridges of the muscles in here, kind of making up the wall of the ventricle, or these bundles referred to as trabeculae carneae. In fact, if we look at this front piece that's initially situated on here, so it's here. If we flip it around, that's going to be the other wall of the ventricles. Here's showing some more of those bundles. So that's another representation of the trabeculae carnae. There's one last set of muscles found in the atrium. In these models, it's seen best on the right atrium side. So these ridges of muscle in here, and then a little bit underneath, are representing the pectinate muscles. You can think the pecs of your body, like your pec muscles. These are the pecs of the heart. So that's pectinate. Something we can see in the atrium. So through here, this structure is representing the fossa ovalis. There's a flap of tissue here that's between the two atria. Initially, there's a hole in the fetal heart, but that gets closed up. Again, we don't have any mixing of the blood from the right side to the left side. Okay, that moderator band is something that's not shown very well in these models. It's going to be this band of tissue in the right ventricle only. That's something you can see the best using that visible body software. Okay, so keep in mind, just kind of with those Latin terms, you make sure you have the distinction between trabeculae carnae, chordae tendae, ligamentum arteriosum. I think those are the ones students might commonly confuse. But those are going to be the structures we can see looking at the internal view of these heart models.